Okay. We just finished with Peter's denial of Christ, and it's 3 days later. It's resurrection morning. And the women are going to the grave to take care of Jesus. And this is what they encounter in Mark 16, 6 to 7. Somebody read 6 and 7.
Don't be alarmed, he said. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him? But go, tell his disciple and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you.
Okay. So they're going up to the grave, and depending on which book you read in the New Testament, depending on which gospel you read, you get a different scenario. Not a conflicting scenario, but just a bigger picture if you read them all. So they're going up there to do what? Why are the women going up to the grave?
To put scent, open the grave and clean the body, put scent on it, you know.
Clean him up, get all the blood off of him, anoint him with burial spices, wrap him in clean linens, and get him ready for the tomb. All right. How many people were looking forward to resurrection morning?
Then?
10?
Then, not many.
I got 10.
No, then. I was asking, then? At the time?
At the time.
At the time? None.
None. Not a one. How many times had Jesus told them that he was going to die and after 3 days come out of the grave?
A bunch.
Huh?
A bunch.
A bunch.
I don't know how many times.
A bunch. He had told them several times. I am going to die, I'm going to be crucified, and I'm going to, on the third day, I'm going to rise again. Alrighty?
All right.
And not one person is looking forward to the event. Not one. Why were they alarmed?
Because the body was gone.
Body was gone. Why would they be alarmed? Why wouldn't they say, hey, it happened. The body's gone.
I don't think they fully understood what was going to happen.
Okay. Why should they have understood?
Because Jesus told them about it.
Jesus told them.
And they've read about it through, you know, the scripture, through, you know, prophets and over years, and they were taught that this was going to happen.
Yeah, they were taught that it was going to happen.
And then they had proof and said, oh no. We just did this, and he came back home.
And also, what happened last week? Not in our time, but in Jesus' time. What happened the week before? Just the week before.
Oh, it was Palm Sunday.
And just prior to Palm Sunday, what happened?
Lazarus.
He brought Lazarus back from the dead on the fourth day. Why? If you go back and read that story, you'll see that Jesus hesitated for 2 days before he went to raise Lazarus. Why did he do that?
So that he could prove that, you know, he just wasn't sleeping. You know, they made a mistake. You know, he wasn't really dead.
Yeah, exactly right. There was a tradition among the Jews that you didn't seal the grave for 3 days. Because there were occasions when they thought people were dead, but they put them in the cool tomb and they came back. They regained consciousness. Back then they didn't have stethoscopes and they didn't have all the modern machinery we have today. And back then, they didn't have any real way to check and see for sure that a person was dead. They would try to wake him up. They would try to hear his heart, but if the person was overweight or had a lot of fat, you wouldn't be able to hear a faint heartbeat like you could with a stethoscope. But on the fourth day, it was assumed that the person was dead. There was no doubt. If he'd have came on the second day, they'd have said, well, that's happened before. He didn't really raise anybody from the dead. If he'd have came on the third day, they'd have had the same excuse. But on the fourth day, everybody in Israel knew that Lazarus was dead. And remember what they said? Don't open that door. He's already started to stink. Okay? Jesus walks up to the door and says, Lazarus, come forth. And Lazarus comes out of the grave. Okay? That was just a week ago. And then there was a little girl who had died. And everybody, and they were weeping and wailing and mourning when Jesus got to the house back about the first year of his ministry. And he looked at the crowd and he said, no, she's not dead. And everybody laughed at him. The disciples were there. He goes in, he picks the little girl up, he comes out, hands her to his mother, to her mother, and says, give her something to eat. And the little girl's alive. Everybody knew all this. But they couldn't believe it. They absolutely could not apply that to Jesus. Their grief had smothered their common sense, their knowledge.
They were too emotional.
Huh?
They were too emotional.
They were too emotional, and they were grieving. Okay. They were alarmed because the body was gone. Remember why the guards were posted at the grave to protect the grave?
So that the disciples wouldn't steal the body. They were afraid
Yeah,
of.
the chief priest said, we need to guard that grave because the disciples will come and they'll steal the body and then they'll claim he's risen. Even the chief priest knew the claim and tried to guard against it. And they didn't believe it either. Do you think any guard in this world could keep Jesus from coming out of that grave if it was an act of God? I mean, they didn't even believe it either. What was odd about the instruction in verse 7? But go, tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you in Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you. What's odd about that instruction?
They didn't tell him to come look and see that his body was gone.
Okay. But yeah, go tell the disciples to go down to Galilee, not to come to the grave. Okay. And there's something else there, something very subtle.
It said
You will
disciples and Peter.
Yeah, why did he-
wasn't one.
Why didn't he just say the disciples? Why did he say, go tell the disciples and Peter? Wasn't Peter a disciple anymore?
But Peter, is it because Peter denied Jesus?
He had denied Jesus, but there's a message in that for Peter. You know, Peter is probably at the lowest place he's ever been in his life. As far as he's concerned, he has abandoned God 3 times after he was told he would do it. The rooster, the whole thing. And Peter is probably as low as he has ever been in his life and as low as he will ever be in his life. He is utterly defeated. And Jesus said, and this angel sent a message to the disciples, but especially to Peter, that it's okay. He's still going to see you later. Okay? What does that tell you about God?
He's forgiving. He forgives.
He is ultimately forgiving. He will forgive you right up to your last breath if you will accept the forgiveness. You can't do anything that would keep you in hell if you repent and look to God. He would that none would perish, no matter what. Hitler on his knees, the last day of the war, could have been saved. I think the demons had control of him by then, and he wasn't capable of making the move. But if he had repented, God would have forgiven him. I'm not sure I like that idea, but the scriptures are very plain on it. He would that no man would perish, that all should receive eternal life. Why should the resurrection have been an expectation? We covered that. I got ahead of myself. Okay. He had raised Lazarus. He had brought the little girl back to life. He had healed thousands. And he had told them over and over and over again, it's going to happen. And the third day comes, you would think you'd be sitting there going, just 4 more hours, just 4 more hours. They were hiding in a dark room, grieving with basically no hope. Luke 24:11-12.
But they did not believe the women because their words seemed to them like nonsense. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves, and he went away, wondering to himself what had happened.
All right. How was Peter different?
He wanted to see for himself.
Everybody else, but they did not believe the women because the words seemed to be like nonsense. But Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb.
He wanted it to be true.
He wanted it to be true. And the message that the women gave him singled him out and made him special. The message touched his heart. He knew that God had not forsaken him. And when he got that message, he had to know. And he got up and ran all the way to the tomb. Probably his tomb was 2 to 3 miles away from where they probably were. We don't know for sure. The temple was in the middle of town. Golgotha was a mile and a half or so out of town. And they think they found the tomb just down the road from there. There's a track in the rock, cut in the rock, where the stone was rolled in that track. Now they think they found the tomb. And it isn't a logical place for it to have been. But Peter got up and he ran to the tomb. Okay? John 23-5 makes it a little bigger, gives us a little more detail. Okay, so somebody read 3-8. John 23-8.
So Peter and the other disciples started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciples outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and looked in at the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. Then Simon Peter, who was behind him, arrived and went into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen laying there, as well as the burial cloth that had been around Jesus' head. The cloth was folded up by itself, separate from the linens. Finally, the other disciples, who had reached the tomb first, also went inside. He saw and believed.
Okay. Now, if we look at Luke, Peter immediately, everybody said, that doesn't make any sense. But Peter jumps up and heads for the tomb. You go to John, you've got Peter and John heading for the tomb. And it says that John outran Peter, so it probably indicates that Peter took off first and then John took off after him. Okay? No one else will. Right? What happened there?
At the tomb?
Now, what happened in this scenario? Peter jumps up and takes off running. Everybody says that's nonsense. Peter jumps up and takes off running. John takes up and follows him, and they both ran to the tomb. John outruns him in the end. Okay. What happened? The first response was, this is nonsense, that's crazy. Peter didn't buy it. Peter took off. What happened when Peter took off?
He was leading them. They saw Peter go, he saw Peter go and thought, you know, I got to go with him.
Because Peter was willing to take the first step. Because Peter was willing to get up and go. John had the courage to follow him. Okay? We have a lot of power to lead this world. And that's a perfect example. I told you about the story of when I was in basic training and we got our first paycheck. And it was $37. They gave me all of $37 a month. So we got our paycheck. Everybody wanted to go down to the beer hall. Then I don't like beer. And I had $37. I mean, that's $1 a day for the rest of the month. And so there was a guy named Pendergast, named Ed Pendergast. He said, "Come on, let's go to the beer hall. Let's get some beer." I thought, $37. Well, it turned out the beer was only like a quarter a month. But everybody said, "Are you going?" And he was getting all these people together. And he said, "Are you going?" And I said, "No." "Well, everybody else is going." I said, "I'm not going." "Why not?" "I'm just not going." And he kind of made fun of me, and everybody started for the door except for one guy, and he came over and he said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Oh, I think I'll go down to PX and get a pizza." You get a big pizza and a pitcher of Pepsi for $1 at the PX. Not a huge pizza, but he said, "Well, you want some company? I'll go with you." I said, "Sure, come along." So we got up and we went out and we started the other way, and two more guys ran up to us. They said, "Where are you guys going?" I said, "We're going down to PX, get a pitcher of Pepsi and a pizza." "Can we go with you?" "Yeah." So we went there. And we got a big pizza and a couple of pitchers of Pepsi, and we had a real nice evening. Got back to barracks, went to bed about 1 o'clock. Here they came in, and they were loud and carrying on. About an hour later, Pendergast goes flying down the middle of the barracks to the bathroom, and he's in there making all kinds of noise. I mean, he's throwing up, carrying on. He gets out and he comes back out, he goes back to bed, and he spent the whole night hugging the toilet. So the next weekend comes along, and it's Saturday night, and we're off. We're in basic training, but we were off on Saturdays. And so Pendergast starts, "Hey, let's go down and get some, let's go down to the beer hall." Well, I had more people go with me that week than he had go with him. And after the second day, they were totally out of money. They were broke. And they spent the whole weekend miserable with a hangover. And we got up and was having a good time. The second week, he came in, he sits down at the table, and he's sitting there with a cup of coffee and got his head in his hands, turned like this. So I walked through the chow line, and the guy said, "How do you want your eggs?" And I said, "I want them scrambled and I want them runny." So I sat down right in front of Pendergast. I took my fork and I took them in the eggs and I picked them up, and they were just kind of oozing up the fork. Put them in my mouth, and he He looked up and looked at me and jumped up and ran out of the mess hall and threw up on the sidewalk outside the mess hall. Got in trouble, they made him clean up the sidewalk. Now, that probably wasn't the Christian thing to do. And I probably wouldn't do it today. I wouldn't say I wouldn't, but I probably would.
Careless or everywhere.
And I have repented of that. But the bottom line is, they spent all their money being miserable. But because I was willing to say no, other people had an option. And if we are willing to say no, if we are willing to go the other direction and to take the different path, then we are offering other people who are looking for some kind of leadership to follow and to find Christ too. Okay? Now that wasn't my goal with Pendergast, but it is a good example of how if you will do the other thing, other people are looking for an opportunity to do it too. They're just not brave enough. A lot of times, just saying no will encourage somebody who would like to say no but doesn't have the courage. Why did John hesitate at the tomb? You don't know, so I'll tell you. Jewish tradition said that if you got within a certain distance of a dead person, or touched a dead person, or was touched by anything the dead person was wearing, you were unclean. And you would not be able to be with your family, you would not be able to sleep in your bed, you would not be able to do anything until the priest had purified you after 7 days. And that was a tradition that John had lived with since he was a little bitty baby. And so when he got to the grave, he hesitated because the tradition said that he would be unclean if he went in. What Peter did? Get out of my way. And he went flying into the middle of that grave. And, you know, it was full speed ahead, damn the torpedoes. That was exactly where Peter was at the moment. I am going to see for myself. I don't care what tradition is. I don't care what the priest says. I don't care what. If I have to wait 7 days, I'm going to find out. And he was charging right into the grave. Why did John now believe? Both were running. Simon Peter, who was behind him, arrived and went into the tomb, saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the burial cloth that had been around Jesus' head. The cloth was folded up by itself, separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple, who had reached the tomb first, also went inside. He saw and he believed. Why did John now believe?
Saw it with his own eyes.
What?
Saw it with his own eyes.
He saw it with his own eyes. But there's no faith in that.
Doubting Tom.
Peter had the faith to believe and charged right in. Because if Jesus was no longer dead, he would not be unclean by entering the tomb. His was the act of faith. John's was the act of proof. Peter was the one in this scenario that displayed the faith needed to throw off tradition, to throw off the grieving, to throw off common sense, and to charge full steam ahead. John didn't believe until he saw. Who's the guy that gets a bad rap for that?
Doubting Thomas.
Doubting Thomas. What did Doubting Thomas say?
I will not believe until I see it with my own eyes.
I will not believe until I see the wounds, until I see the stab marks. I will not believe. And we just beat him over the head all day long. Was John any different? No. John wouldn't believe Peter. Why is the head cloth important? He goes to great detail to tell us that the burial, they wrapped him in long strips. You've seen a mummy, kind of the same thing. They wrapped them in long strips. Well, those were laid off to the side, but the face napkin or the burial napkin was folded neatly and laid over to the side. Why is that important? That's probably another reason why John believed.
Something about coming back, but I don't remember the details.
Was it, because it would have been almost strapped to his face that they would have to peel it off?
Okay, that's probably true. The Shroud of Turin, it shows the stripes, it shows the stab mark, the spear point in the side. There was probably a lot of indication on his napkin, but there was something special about folded neatly by itself.
Probably because he reached up and took it off of him and set it, folded it.
Okay, you don't know, so I'll tell you.
Okay. Go right ahead.
It was a tradition back then, if the master of the house was eating his supper and he was interrupted when the servants came in and said, hey, such, you need to come out here and talk to this Roman or whatever. If he was not done eating yet, he just laid the napkin down on the table, unfolded right beside his plate, went out, took care of business, did whatever had to be done, wiped the blood off his son's knee, whatever he had to do. And then he came back in and finished his meal. When he finished his meal, he folded the napkin neatly and laid it down, and then the servants knew they could clear the table. But if that napkin wasn't folded yet, then he wasn't finished. Supper wasn't done. So when Jesus folded that napkin and laid it to the side, remember what he said on the cross minutes before he died?
It is finished.
It is finished. When he folded that napkin and laid it over to the side, he was saying to all of Israel, it is now truly finished. It's over. Not only have I given up my life, but I have conquered Satan and the pits of hell, and I have set the captives free. It is now truly finished. Okay? And when John saw that, he knew exactly what it meant. He knew that every claim that Jesus had made, every word that he had said, had now come true. And then he believed. Then. Any questions on that? Luke 24, 33 to 34.
They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 and those with them assembled together and saying, it is true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon.
Okay, and 1 Corinthians 15, 3 through 5.
For what I received, I passed on to you as of first importance, that Christ died for our sins according to Scripture, that he was buried, that he was risen on the third day according to Scripture, and that he appeared to Peter and then to the 12.
Okay. What special thing, go back up to 11, you thought I skipped over there. The answer, didn't you? Go back up to 11. What special thing did Jesus do just for Peter?
He appeared to him first.
He appeared to him first. The other disciples had to wait until they got to Galilee to see Jesus. But in 1 Corinthians 15, 3 through 5, it said that he appeared to Peter before that happened. And in Luke 24:33-34, they got up and returned at once to Jerusalem, where they found the 11. And those of them assembled together and saying, "It is true, the Lord is risen and has appeared to Simon." Why did Jesus do that? Why did he single him out? Because it was special, right?
We're all special, but he knew Peter was taking it harder probably because he had denied
Exactly
him.
right. We're all special. That's exactly right. But Peter needed it the most. And Peter had taken the initiative. Peter had earned it. Was he still guilty of denying him 3 times? Yes. And Jesus isn't done with him yet. This process is going to carry on till the day of the ascension. But Jesus has showed him his love and has showed him that he has been restored. That all is well. And because Jesus needed it the most, he took a special effort to provide for Peter what he needed. Okay? What's that tell you about God?
He knows what we need, and if we ask and pray, and we'll receive what we need.
Absolutely. For the moment, he knows what we need at the moment.
Always.
He knows what we need always. He knows that we need every single step of the way. Think about a ball, a volleyball. Okay. And on that volleyball is, you draw a line, and that is my path. The path that my life took. Where it started is where I was born. And where it is now is 71 years later. And then you can draw a dotted line to when I'm 93 and die. Okay? Now, I haven't gotten there yet. I haven't seen any part of that spotted line, that dotted line. I don't know what's going to happen. But the inside of that ball is the spiritual world. And the air that keeps that ball inflated, let's call that God. Now me, I'm on the line, and I can just see to the horizon or to the next bend in the road. Or if I'm nearsighted, I can't even see that far. Okay? But God, he's inside the ball, and he's touching that entire line from my birth to my death, even the dotted part that I haven't seen yet. And he sees the entire path. And not only does he provide my needs today, he has already provided my needs tomorrow, because he knows what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't. I don't even know if it's going to be a tomorrow. I don't know what's around that next bend. I don't know what's over the horizon. But God fills that ball and touches every line on that ball. Jennifer's line. Now, Jennifer's line is not the same as my line, but this morning they've intersected. We're sitting here in the same room together, and our lines are going to run together for a couple hours, and then they're going to separate again. And Jessica's is the same way. Right now, all of our lines are touching and going the same direction. A couple hours from now, they'll separate and go different directions. And then they'll come back together again at some point. And we don't know. The only thing we know about that line is what has been, at least when you're 71, what you can remember that has been. I've truly been blessed with a great memory. That's both a blessing and a curse. There's a lot of things I'd like to forget. But the fact is, we can only know what has been and what is. But see, God is the I am, the all-present God. And he is touching the entire length of that line, from the beginning to the end. We leave the spiritual world of God, we are born on this earth, we walk our path, and then we return to the spiritual world of God. But God is in contact with that entire life. My funeral, 10 years, 20 years from now, God's already experienced that. He already knows all about it. He is there right now waiting for me to arrive. Because his spirit touches the entire surface of that ball from the inside. And he sees the whole thing. Are you worried about tomorrow? I'm not either. Are you worried about tomorrow? You look a little worried. Do you know what's going to happen tomorrow? Does God know what's going to happen tomorrow? So what are we worried about? He sees the entire line from the beginning to the end. And he's already taken care of it. Whatever we need 5 years from now, it's already been arranged. We do not have to solve. Okay. How do you think it changed Peter? Well, we're gonna get some examples next week when we look at the look at the final episode between Jesus and Peter. But how do you think it changed?
I think he started, when he realized everything, he was saying was true, he probably went back in his mind and remembered things and thought, okay, this is true, then, he's here for me, things are going to start happening, everything's true, the scriptures are all true. He may have went back through all the scriptures and read what, Jesus was going to accomplish.
Exactly right.
He also had to feel like I didn't mess it up. It's still gonna, like you said, he was restored.
I didn't totally mess it up. I messed it up, but
Yeah.
it's not a total loss. Yeah, exactly right. I didn't totally mess it up. It's not completely gone. Anybody else? How do you think it helped Peter? I think it restored his confidence. I think it lifted him up and he could look forward to what he needed to do next with pure and total confidence. That even if he messed it up, God was still going to love him. All right, next week we look at his final episode